Hey everybody, how's it going? The world's getting warm. Feels like summer today. Um, de Mayo, happy Cinco de Mayo. If you don't know what that is, we celebrate Mexico's defeat of the French army in 1862 during our Civil War. The French fought back. I should say the Mexican army fought back the French, defeated them, and they've been celebrating ever since. And so have we. Thank you, Mexico. 5th of May. It's an important date. Anyway, hope everything's going well out in your world. We're winding down, folks. With us today, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I think only 4 more lectures, and then 2.5 more weeks. So I hope you're working on your final papers. I've listed everything I can on that assignment. Even someone asked me a question today. Thank you, Lauren, for bringing that up. Yes, you're going to need a works cited page on your research paper. I need to know where you got your research at. It's important to see where you got your info at. And please just don't copy from Wikipedia. I won't like that. Find a movie, a documentary, something to watch. Some other aspects of reading besides just Googling, besides just Wikipedia. Okay, it's too easy. No copy and paste jobs. Use your analytical mind. And if you're writing about a filmmaker, meaning a director, I just mostly have directors. I have some writers, some cinematographers. Go deep. Just don't tell me their history or when they were born, what high school they went to. I don't really care. I want to know what makes them them and what makes their films important throughout the history of cinema. Just like your essays, except for this is not going to be you analyzing a movie I want you to watch. This is going to be analyzing somebody's life. And you'll have to have some type of citation proof to where you got your info. Okay. Also, what else? Make sure you guys put a page number on. Yeah, you need a running so get it in. And if it's submitted the 25th, you will be docked some points for it being late. Just like the essays. I always give you guys a couple days to be late with, but then you are late if you're late. So don't be late. Today I want to talk about film festivals and the important part they play in cinema, worldwide cinema, not just American cinema. They've always been around, Berlin Film Festival, Venice Film Festival, but they hadn't really been that hugely influential, say, in the United States as they were in Europe. And a lot of those films there, like Cannes Film Festival, maybe you've heard of it, huge. They're usually held in really fancy places in Europe, so people go there to party, and the starlets parade around in skimpy outfits, get their photos taken, and you can sell. If you get invited to the film festival, you look out, hopefully, and sell your film. Most of the films have already been sold, so it's kind of a gimme, and they kind of front load the films with heavy hitters at those festivals. One big surprise film festival was invite, I should say, was the film Easy Rider in the Cannes Film Festival. It put them on the map. Maybe you hopefully saw the documentary. I wanted you guys to watch for the quiz. It's in there. They were surprised as heck that their little indie biker film got invited to such a large, prestigious film festival. And they took it by storm. They changed the whole way people looked at it. It was all of a sudden the new generation, the rebel with causes generation, the so-called hippie generation invaded the staid, formal, old world cinema that was the Cannes Film Festival, and they made it rock. They did. And they even created a new category so the film could win something. I think they called it Best Creative Director or something like that. So it was a big winner. Then it went on to make a lot of money, folks. Little $300,000-$400,000 movie made hundreds of millions of dollars over the years. They did well. And when there's money like that, there's always problems. Poor Dennis Hopper, who was acted it and directed it, always felt he didn't get his just financing, his part of the money, and he always had lawsuits going. Peter Fonda, who produced it and acted in it, and they were at each other's throats until Dennis died. Now Peter's dead, so who cares? Now it's over. They all became rich and famous over it. But if you well know how fame and power goes, you could go through your money pretty fast if you're a fool. And be careful out there, guys. Anyway, so there's a godfather of indie films called his name's John Cassavetes. He was an American Greek actor, very well-known actor here in America. He was acted in all sorts of television in the 50s, 60s, and the 70s. He also acted in big-time films like Rosemary's Baby. He played Mia Farrow's husband, like the Dirty Dozen. He was with Lee Marvin. He was the kind of bad boy soldier in that, and he steals every scene he's in, like he always does. But he also wanted to be a filmmaker, and about 1959 or 8, he made his first movie on 16 millimeter in New York City with his acting friends called Shadows, and it was it kind of opened a new door of how to make films in this country, very similar to the Italian taping. Recording real live car door slamming, but it doesn't sound as good in the environment of nature outside. So it kind of swallows up sound. If you've ever heard gunshots, real ones, outside, they sound a lot different than movie gunshots. In fact, every time there's a shooting outside, people always say, it sounds like firecrackers, because it doesn't sound like movie gunshots, because the environment out there swallows up that kind of sound. And so every gunshot, horse running sound out there is usually put in later, after the movie's already made. Cassavetes didn't have the money for that, and so the sound you get is the sound that was happening at the time. And so people thought it was a revolution in this country, pardon me, because it sounded so raw and real. But like he said in all his interviews, I wasn't trying to do anything radical. It was the only way I could do it. And he didn't pay anybody, but that money, he had all his little acting buddies in the New York scene. They did this little cool film about interracial love affair. And it's a cool movie set in the cool area of New York, and during the time of when jazz and New York was a pretty hip place. And later on, he really got on the map with a movie called Faces, came out in 1968, black and white. I will probably show you a preview to it, so you'll be able to see it on Canvas. Check it out. He cast his wife in a lot of this stuff. Jan Rollins was in most of his movies, not the very first one, but from Faces on, I do believe she starred in every one of his movies. I may be wrong in that, but I don't think so. So she's working for nothing, and then he would get his mother to be in it, his in-laws, his kids would be in it. He would film at his own house as a set with his friends and his family, and then he would use the money he would make in acting. He'd get an acting gig like on a Columbo or something, which he did a lot of those with Peter Falk because they were good friends. He'd take that money, make whatever he could make on a guest starring appearance in those days, which was pretty good. He could make 50, 60 grand if you were a guest star in those days. It's not like that now. And so he'd take that money and sink it into his own film. And he was that obsessed with getting the film done. Faces was another groundbreaking film. It's uncomfortable to watch. It's very, very uses close-ups a lot, and it seems like everything's improvised, meaning the dialogue, and so there's a lot of raw emotions in it, and a lot of beauty. After that, that won him a lot of accolades, and then he's off and running from that, but his films never made so much money that he could quit his day job, which was acting. He was acting up until the day he died in the 80s of alcoholism, essentially. Wonderful actor. I just love John Cassavetes and his wife. They were the power couple of indie filmmaking. Very, very important, the whole story. The filmmakers that started making films on small scale, they all use him as a reference. I covered some of them last week. People like John Sayles, David Lynch, Jim Jarmusch, Spike Lee, all were majorly influenced by John Cassavetes. Martin Scorsese, who has essentially worked mostly in the Hollywood system. Martin Scorsese, huge influence. Anybody who believes in trying to get authentic truth on celluloid owes a debt to John Cassavetes. I remember reading an interview with him years and years ago, and I took it to heart, folks. He said, if a filmmaker isn't willing to mortgage their house to help finance the film, they're not a filmmaker. I thought, I like that. So I made a couple films in the 90s. I didn't have a house to mortgage, but I did go in major debt, credit card debt, because I kept quoting Cassavetes. I go, Cassavetes says, you have to invest in your own movie or you're not a filmmaker. Well, I took it to heart, folks. A lot of people did. So anyway, he was a mentor to everybody. Died way too young. I think he was not 60 yet. He just had a major, he died of cirrhosis of the liver, major drinking problem, smoking problem. Impassioned man. Can't say enough about John Cassavetes. And he worked with some of the greats like Peter Falk, Ben Gazzara. These people worked in all his movies. He got them because they wanted to be a part of this. They wanted to do something real. So anyway, film festivals. In the 80s, there was a film festival called the USA Film Festival, and it was in Utah. Robert Redford, the actor from Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, this kid and this Sting and the Way We Were and the rest of it, wanted to give something back to filmmakers. He believed in them that much. And so he essentially took over that festival, and he changed the name to Sundance. Maybe you've heard of it. Sundance Film Festival is named from his character in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And he moved it to Park City, Utah, which is a ski resort town about 50, 60 miles, I want to say northeast of Salt Lake City. If you haven't been up there, go up there. It's beautiful. A lot of rich people live there, folks, like Aspen. And then he started in full. And then people were getting noticed at the Sundance Film Festival because of Redford's name. And he was very involved in the festival. And about 1989, I do believe it was, Steven Soderbergh who's still making lots of movies right now. Maybe he's seen the Ocean's 11 movies and the rest. Um, he just directed the Academy Awards and got on TV, and it got really bad reviews. Um, but he made a film called Sex, Lies, and Videotape, a low budget film with mostly unknown actors. They're known now, but they weren't then. And it was about a guy who was, I guess, a filmmaker. He would tape women uh, confessing their deepest, darkest secrets, sexual secrets, and then he would get them to uh, essentially pleasure themselves on camera. Not him. It's not porn. Themselves. And the women wanted to do it because they'd get a little drunk. They feel vulnerable and free. And obviously he's having problems meeting women. And so the thing falls apart when the boyfriends, husbands find out about this stuff. And it's all about the kind of the burgeoning camcorder videotape phenomenon. Now we're all doing cell phones. Be careful, folks, what you do on your cell phone. It's in the cloud somewhere. So that movie was made for very little money, and it made a lot of money, and it got a lot of big press, and it put Sundance on the map for sure. Now everybody wanted into this film festival. And so people like Robert Rodriguez, who had directed El Mariachi and Quentin Tarantino, who had done Reservoir Dogs, and Richard Linklater, who did Slacker, Kevin Smith, who did Clerks, maybe you know these movies, Allison Anders, who I actually got to write about last week, who did her films, besides the one I asked you to write about, and others. They all started wanting to get into this festival. That's how important it was. And because it's out of the way, it's held in winter up in Park City in January, and it can be very brutal, meaning it's a ski resort town. And so it's a little hard. It's definitely difficult to get there. You got to fly to Salt Lake City, and then you got to rent a car to go up the mountain road to the ski resort, and you better get your reservations in early because there's no place to stay up there. I made a film called God Drives a Pontiac in 1995. It was rejected from Sundance, but there was a new upstart festival starting that same year, 1995, called Slam Dance. Yes, it's a play on words. And punk rock. If you guys know what punk is, they used to do this dancing called slam dancing. The punks would push each other around. Just watch any Black Flag video. If you know who I'm talking about, you'll see slam dancing. It can be dangerous. And it was called Slam Dance Anarchy in Utah. And it was a direct revolt on the face of the supposed straight-laced Sundance for films that didn't have movie stars in them. Real low-budget films, like my film. And Sundance started getting such a name that they were no longer the films that they were choosing to get in their festival. If you were chosen to get into their festival, it was so powerful that you were almost for sure a sale. This is where all the distributors from Hollywood and else New York go to buy films. And so if you make a film, say for $100,000, you might sell your film for $4 or $5 million if you're lucky. And then guess what, folks? You have a career, hopefully, possibly, because you're going to get to be able to do more films on the fact that your film screened at Sundance. It's really important as a credit. And so people started trying to find movie stars to be in their low-budget movies, because if you have a face in your movie, it helps sell it, a known name. That's not how early stuff was at Sundance, and so people were rebelling against that because most of us couldn't afford movie stars or television stars, anybody with a name. That was the whole point of film festivals. Later on, Robert Redford came out on the national news, folks. You can Google all this. It's on YouTube, I believe. And he was complaining about this film festival copying their name and coming in on their coattails. Yes, they held at the same time as Sundance, and they had screenings in Park City and some screenings in Salt Lake City. Same week. They did that on purpose. Well, it was on the news. It made the national news. And Dan Rather, who was a big newscaster in those days, actually had a little bit of an editorial. It was about how Goliath, which was Sundance, and Redford was being assaulted by Little David, which was the Slam Dance Film Festival, and there was a huge backlash on the big corrupt Sundance from trying to squish these younger filmmaker upstarts. Well, Redford at one time was even threatening to sue to stop them for doing it. When that story came out, they pulled out. They stopped all their nonsense. Redford came out. His spokesman said, "We embrace this film festival. We know what they're doing. We embrace them. We're not going to try to fight them," which was a smart thing to do. Now, since then, my film played in Slam Dance. It was one of the original 12 films. So we all flew up to my girlfriend, who was my producer, my lead actor, and his girlfriend. We all flew to Park City. We had rented a room in a condo, and for 5 days we hung out with other filmmakers. We put posters all around the town, kind of like you're promoting a rock concert for yourself. And we're hobnobbing with all these filmmakers from all over the world. And it was pretty fun and exciting. If you've ever been to Park City, you can actually ski. You see the ski people skiing right down the mountain. They could ski right down Main Street. That's how close the ski on the outskirts of Telluride. We didn't make it into that film festival either, but there was a little screening of other films on the outside of the festival in a hotel conference, and our film played there. And then there's obviously there's film festivals almost in every town in America right now, even small towns. Ashland, Santa Barbara, everybody has a film festival. San Francisco, those are large towns, obviously, but they're everywhere now. They weren't in those days, because what happens is they felt they were good for tourism. Have a film festival and maybe get some movie stars hobnobbing in your town, and people will come and spend. So it became a thing to help the community you live in. So during that year, our film played in about 10 different festivals, all around, from Florida to New York to Tacoma, LA. I can't think of all of them. Taos, Santa Fe Film Festival. That's where we were from, and so thankfully we got in those, and it was a pretty healthy thing. And then you hope someone's going to buy your film, and that's the dream, so you can make another film. So anyway, the huge important film festivals now are Toronto. Canada's huge. If your film gets in there, South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, really important. Palm Springs Film Festival is really important. I mean, it helps if your film gets into one of these things. You will get some press at least, and hopefully noticed by somebody, not just an audience, but somebody who may help you sell your film, or at least give you a leg up on the next film. Now, do they have the same cachet that they had then? I don't believe they do. The average film festival that was happening at Sundance, the films would cost anywhere from $30,000 to $200,000. Rarely was there $1 million film there. Reservoir Dogs was a rarity. Now everything's $10 million, and you gotta have movie stars in your film. Nobody wants to see a $30,000 film made with your friends anymore. I mean, maybe they do. I still say go out and do it. Because now we have all these other outlets like YouTube and Vimeo. We have other platforms besides this. I made some films strictly for uh, YouTube, and I had more audience hits, 150,000 hits, than I ever had seen my film in a movie theater. So you can get your stuff out there. Making money is a whole different deal. But the 3 or 4 films that really made the film festival, Sundance, I want to talk about those briefly. One was called El Mariachi by Robert Rodriguez. He filmed it for $7,000. Maybe you've seen it. He made a sequel called Desperado, which was a $10 million movie, and I'll tell you about that in a second. He was a student going to the film school in Austin, and the teacher said, "You'll never make it. Drop out." And Smith, he got huge. Clerks was a huge, huge hit. Our film was playing in a lot of same theaters that his film played in, and I would go to these theaters, and his film would have 300 people in there, and mine would have 20. And I told my producer, I go, this guy hit the zeitgeist with Clerks, and if you've seen it, you know what I mean. He hit Generation X, which is the generation below me. He hit it perfectly. The dead-end jobs, working at the video store, the whole Quentin Tarantino story. That's Quentin Tarantino's life. Well, Kevin Smith hit that by having Clerks. Not much happens in Clerks. They just sit around bitching all the time, working these dead-end jobs at video stores. They don't have video stores anymore, or the pizza place or liquor stores, and they want to make a movie. How do you do that? All 3 of those films were written about in a magazine called Filmmaker Magazine, which really is not much in existence any longer, but it came out 94 or something like that, and with an article about how these films were made and how they got them made, how much they spent on everything. Food, film stock, pay the actors, not pay the actors, nobody paid actors. And when I saw that, it was like gold. It was the first time. This is long before we could Google everything, folks. There was no internet yet. So we couldn't just Google how to get your film made. It was a big mystery. And so when I read that article, I said to my then producer, we could make a film. Look, here's the blueprint. It said cost, what kind of cameras to use, what kind of lighting you need, how much food does it take to feed 20 people a day for 10 days, how long can you make your film, can you make the film? And we used it as our Bible. We did. So we made our film for $30,000. We got most of the film donated from the co-op in Santa Fe, who were happy to donate food to get to be part of the film. We got lawyers. We got all sorts of people donating their time and effort to our film because they wanted to be part of the process. And will that ever happen again? I'm not sure. People have gotten cynical now. They want to get paid for everything. So those days are probably over, but you never know. Plus, we would get actors and technicians who wanted to work for credit. If you get a credit on a feature film, it's a big deal. And so essentially you work for credit. And we didn't kill everybody. Our film took 13 days to film. We had a pretty good time, changed our lives. It did, changed everybody's lives involved in it. I still know quite a few of them. My editor, my assistant director, my producer, my lead actor is dead. He committed suicide. He's not around. Yeah, it changes lives if you allow it to. So I'll post a couple of those samples of those movies so you'll see what these small movies for $25,000, you see what they look like. And you see they're amateur looking. Yes, they are. Primitive, absolutely. Interesting and engaging storytelling, absolutely. And that's the key to it all, folks. And on that note, remember, everything is cinema. Everything. Don't let people convince you it's not. I will see you next time when the story of film continues.